Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to today's review. And today for you I have another tip review, and I have finally the Sedna Earfit Crystal. Yes, this is a bad boy. That is, I think, the most expensive regular pair of tips I've ever seen. It comes in at a shocking $25. Yes, I repeat, $25 for 2 pairs. So yeah, this makes it by far the most expensive tip I've ever used, and it beats the X-Elastex by a good bit, but it also beats tips like the Finally by a good bit. So yeah, this bad boy is pretty expensive, and the per tip pair pricing would be then $12.5, and they justify that with the usage of material. They call it LSR, liquid silicon rubber. And they also claim, and I directly quote their marketing phrasing here, overhaul in sound quality, incredibly comfortable and ultra tight seal. So yeah, if all of those claims are true, we will be finding out in today's review. And as usual, I'll be starting my review off with, what you get with the box, and it's pretty quick here. Yeah, this is the box, it's like shiny, permutty, and I have SS. And when you open it, you get 1 pair here, you get 1 pair here, and you get 4 knobbles to put them on thinner diameter nozzle IEMs. And that's basically it. There's not more to it. And then of course you get the tip itself. And yeah, this tip is actually crystal clear as advertised. This is really it's see-through, alright? If it would not be bent by the angle, you could really just see through the silicone. And yeah, when we talk about comfort, they write in the description for this tips, their design is based on, I quote again, 788 different ear impressions and 182,000 aftermarked ear tips. I don't know what 182,000 aftermarket ear tips mean. I have no clue. So they just want to tell you these tips, these bad boys, are very comfortable, at least according to them. And in practice, whatever they describe here means, you do get sizing that is pretty much available for every ear canal. So as I said, I choose SS. Yeah, packaging, you can see it, it's SS. I choose SS, but you can also get them in S, MS, M, ML, and L. And the outer diameter starts from 10.4 millimeters in diameter, and length 8.8 millimeters, and the widest one with L is 14 millimeter in diameter, and also 8.8 millimeter in length. So yeah, this is always 8.8 in length, but if I read it correctly, you can also get the TWS tips, which I think are 6 millimeter or something, so they're definitely shorter. And I however choose the normal ones because at that moment I didn't even know they had TWS versions, because usually shorter tips work better for my ears. But didn't know. Now you know if you watch this review, and you also know you usually use or need shorter tips. Most likely get the true wireless version, it's just shorter and most likely even better for ears. So talking about SS tip here, as I said, it has a diameter of 10.4 millimeters, which would be in the same realm as the final ear tips here. It's definitely a bit bigger, and for SS, I think 10.4 is on the more bigger side. Other tips that I have had, that are SS or even S, sometimes are only 9.8 millimeters, 9.6, or sometimes just 10. So this with 10.4 actually is not really small. But I can tell you, and I think you can even see it when I squeeze it, squeeze, this material is pretty damn flexible. So yeah, they definitely are right about this material. This is really flexible, and it's pretty soft as well. Adding to the softness, in my opinion, is the relatively thin, not sure how well it's visible on the camera, relatively thin front edge. So this means you don't have the uncomfortable pressure feeling of some IEMs that from some tips that just have a thicker front edge at the tip that just gets uncomfortable over time. These don't really have that. So yeah, I think overall this is a really comfortable tip. It still, however, gets beaten by its older and already slightly yellow tinted version, the XLR stacks. These tips are still most comfortable tips you can buy. Just get them in version smaller because, as you can see at the bottom, yeah, they're going to increase in diameter quite a bit. But as soon as they warm up, they really memory silicon or memory whatever, they just conform to your ear shape so nicely. They just perfect fit, assuming you get them in the right sizing. Okay, so yeah, this means even compared to something like the Final E, these tips are actually really comfortable, and I would put them, I think, still above the what you get with the Final E. So I made a quick ranking, in quotes ranking. It starts with XLR stacks, most comfortable tip here. Tiny bit down, cut foam tips. Like cut foam tips really can be incredibly comfortable if you just find the right length for you. Then there's spin fit, almost on the same level as crystal, and then just a tiny bit beneath that Final E. Like Final E can be really comfortable, don't get me wrong, but I just don't like the way how they how they stay in my ears. Again, this could be that maybe also need the true wireless version of Final E. Could be the case. I don't know. I have not tried the true wireless version, but maybe I should, because generally I think it's not quite my type Final E at least. I think this sums up of comfort. This is a really comfortable tip. Like you don't need to worry about anything in terms of comfort. It just fits. It's soft. It is not too big, like you can get it in enough sizing, you can get it in short. I think if you just know what approximate you need for ears, this will be just fine. Then let's come to the next chapter. And this is noise isolation. And of course, this is not a cut pair of foam. Let me just grab my cut pair of foam. Like this is how a cut foam just looks like. Not the cleanest cut job. I know people, I know it's not the best, but it totally gets the job done. And this is also, like you can see here, the different in length. This is the length that is like just optimal for me. A bit shorter is for some tips already too short, a bit long is too long. So this is approximately what I need for my ears. And yeah, these just isolate pretty damn well, of course, depending on still the IEM, right? But generally, this is like the best isolating tip you can get, just dense foam. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So these are quite a bit worse as expected for regular like silicon or silicon tips in general, but I would still say they isolate better than the average cheapo silicon tip. This is most likely due to the relatively thick material. Let me just turn it around so we can see. Look how thick this silicon is. This is definitively quite a bit thicker. For instance here, finally you can let me see if we can get that visible correctly. So compare that. That's definitely quite a bit thicker on the outer edge. The inner edge is the inner nozzle thing has a similar thickness, but the outer one is definitely thicker here, and that just leads to a better isolation overall. And yeah, I would say, I think compared to most other tips that you get, this is again, I have to use an arbitrary scale here. I'm sorry, I don't have appropriate tools to measure it. So just saying 0 is terrible isolation, really bad, thinnest, cheapest silicon tip you can find, and 10 is a dense foam tip. Then I think the Sedna Earfit Crystal, they come in at I'm not entirely sure. I noted, but I think I would give them a 7 or an 8. But it really, again, it depends on also the IEM you throw it on. So it is pretty decent isolating, but just don't expect it to be foam. And generally, I find this isolation to be this tip to be a good isolating one for just regular traffic. Like if you just go in the city center, this definitely helps with a bit with isolation. But again, don't expect wonders. This is not going to be a foam tip, and it can't do that. But still, for a silicon tip, this is pretty good, isolation, passive isolation. Then we come to the next chapter, and this is shaping sound. And I can already announce it here, and I will be talking about it at the end of this chapter after my subjective impressions, how or what this tip does. Now I'm also measuring my tips, and I will flop them on 2 IEMs. As more neutral, I have the LZ A7, because that is relatively neutralish tuned, it has a pretty good technical performance, and it has a decent treble extension without being overwhelming. So I will use that with red filters, which is the neutral version, and monitor mode. So really it's neutral IEM. And then a second one, I throw on the ISN H40, which I might even have here. I'm using this one because this is a pretty warm V-shaped IEM. It even has a spike at like 8 to 9K. And this is just to show you what happens to bass extension or to bass, and also to peaks in the treble. That's just examples. Like, it's not going to be the same with every IEM. I just choose these two because they are on the like polar opposite of the spectrum of what you can get. And I think these are, decent choices to just measure it objectively. So yes, then let's get in. So, I think what these tips don't do, they don't make your sound more crystal clear, at least subjectively. I did not have the feeling treble was boosted. I did not have the feeling treble extension got better. I just had the feeling bass got worse. Depending on what you want and what you're looking for, this might really not be the tip for you. Just subjectively speaking, I had the feeling that these tips reduce the bass impact, the slam, and generally also like the quantity. So what this does to your bass region is it makes it sound more muddy than it actually is. So putting this on H40 just make it like a bit slurry and more mudded. Like, I really did not like it on the H40 at all. And maybe if you have a purely sub-bass focused IEM, that can still work. On the H40 it just didn't work for me. Putting it on more neutral IEMs like the LZ-A7, however, the influence really not that big. So I still think you do get a bit less like bass impact and bass slam, and generally a bit less mid-bass texture, But overall, really like bass does not get improved by this tip or by this pair of tip. I don't think there's much more to it than talking about what it does to shaping sound. You do get a pretty good soundstage, but I did not have the feeling that the kind of horn shape this one has. Not sure whether that's visible in camera. Like, this is an really wide bore tip, like really wide bore. It's also slightly horn shaped, but I really did not have the feeling it increased treble energy or treble extension. And soundstage, I also did not have the feeling it was better than other wide bore silicon tips. I think with some IEMs that might have like little soundstage, you can maybe hear a difference, but with H40 I did not hear a difference, and with LZ-A7 that generally does not have real soundstage to speak of, I also did not notice much. So I think there's no real point in talking about soundstage, like compared from this to like other whiteboard tips. At least to my ear, there's not really a difference. So yes, then let's talk about the objective measurements. And I will be starting off with my beloved H40. And I will be throwing on a graph that has like all of the tips that I have measured in the last time. And as you can see on this graph, the crystal does, in fact, occur in terms of measurement, not really influence mid or sub-bass extension. Odd, for me at least, because it really sounds like it's going to decrease the mid and sub-bass, like definitely mid-bass quality, but I just don't see it in the graph. And yes, I think some people might like disagree here, but they say, it doesn't measure, so it does not show. But I can just tell you from like what I hear and what I measure, there are differences. And I think part of it could be due to, let me just get the final type E in, because final type E here definitely tightens up mid-bass. Definitely makes it sound more punchy, more textured than it otherwise would be. And if you look at this diameter here, I think the biggest reason for being so is that this tip is just smaller. It just has like less volume, so the bass can be more impactful because you have more like air like pumping in through smaller volume until it gets to your eardrums. So I think this just leads to like overall there's like more air being pushed through less like of diameter, which then causes you to think it is more punchy. Alternatively, something that you can see in the graph is that the final type E actually on the H40, again just speaking about this one so far, actually reduces mid-treble and then pushes the peak that it usually has between like 8 and 9K more in the 10 to 8 and like 10ish K direction. So that then can also lead to the bass region actually feeling more impactful because you're losing a bit of mid-treble presence there. Can be, like, I can't be for certain, but I just tell you this is an possible interpretation. And then we come quickly to the graph of the LZA7, which I will be throwing on now. And yes, sorry, here I have totally different colors, but as you can see, the LZA7 is generally much closer with both tips together than it was at the H40. If you look at the final E performance here, is pretty similar to what we do see with the H40. Meaning the smaller diameter of the final E compared to the crystal or other wider bore silicon ear tips actually reduces mid-treble by a noticeable bit. And as I said before, I still think with the final E tips here you do get better mid-bass. As again, it can be due to the diameter, can be due to that something happens with the treble, I don't know, but generally I had the feeling treble is just playing up better with final E. And I think that's pretty much it about the objective measurements as well. So you can just see how they stack up with each other. Because yes, I'm a man of science and science people do try to find the most objective result for it. And so you can see it just sounds to my ear like that, but objectively measuring, there isn't really much of a difference in bass region whatsoever. So then let's come to the last chapter before the conclusion. And this is additional factors. So as I wrote before, that this tip has an extremely wide outlet. Like, I'm not sure how much millimeters it is, but it looks like maybe 6 millimeters or something like that. So this is really, really wide. And then adding to that, you get like a slight horn shape. So what this then does is, unlike again here, the final E, these are super easy to insert because they're so small, you just floop them in and they're in your ear. Like, there's really no problem. These, complete opposite of the spectrum. Because the outlet is so thick, it's pretty damn difficult to actually insert them in my ear. And making matters even worse, this is smooth but not slippery silicone. So this one is pretty slippery. Like, I can just floop, floop, like slide over it, absolutely no problem. This has definitely more friction going on. Again, it is not XLR tags, which are like really, this is like sticky. Like, this is absolutely sticky. Not the case with the crystal, but still, this is a tip that I would not describe as, like really like slippery. Like, it's smooth enough, but definitely not as nice, like slidey as this one is. So this also means this tip is going to collect dirt a bit faster than, for example, the final E. But overall, it's not a dirt collecting tip. It's not XLR tags that you constantly, like not constantly, but really like relatively often need to clean. Or for instance, you can already see my used foam tip here. That is definitely also dirty, so you need to clean those carefully. This is not as like dirt attracting, but still you need to clean them more often than, for example, these. And speaking of cleaning, so this bad boy can just be washed with warm water. I did have absolutely no problem just rinsing them from water and cleaning them, like really totally fine, nothing to worry about. But you can, I think, also use soap, as this is really not as tricky to clean as XLR tags here again. I try to be really careful with XLR tags, just use lightly warm water, but you can still see this is taking a yellowish hue, while this one, after using it for a few months, still looks pretty like white. I have no doubt it's going to also get like yellow tainted later on, but still, overall, this is a much longer lasting tip. I think you can maybe expect it to last similar, like it's like regular silicone tips like this one. So pretty much, I don't know, like I don't want to say forever, but definitely for quite a few months. What else can I talk about? This actually stretches pretty well, so even getting this one on thick diameter nozzle IEMs like variations does work. So no problem. It's a bit tough as usual because 6.4 millimeters in diameter is thick, but you can get it on, so absolutely no problem. I think that's pretty much it about additional factors. Like, there's not much more to talk about. So then let's come to the conclusion. So this tip is very expensive, $12.5 per pair. It's the most expensive, like non-custom tip I have had so far. And yeah, it really is not for everyone, I would say. Because even for graph does not show it, like it feels just like mid-bass is getting worse. And I know there are people who don't really like mid-bass or who don't care that much, and then this tip can totally work for you. But for instance, on the H40, which has I want to say almost bass bleed, really this tip did not do it favors. Like it just sounded too muddy with it. But other than that, if you don't mind this too much, like this is a really comfortable tip. It isolates pretty well, and yeah, it also will be relatively long lasting. And if you want a bit more soundstage compared to just medium bore tips, this can maybe help you there. I just did not notice it helping that much. So yeah, I would not recommend it because it's just too expensive. But if you find it on sale for, let's say, I don't know, like $9 per pair or so, yeah, it's a really good tip that will work for quite a few IEMs. Just not for all, as I said, because yeah, just it feels like it deteriorates mid-bass. And that's it. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have questions, if you have feedback, if you have any critique, please leave a comment. And with that, Dawn Spector out.